Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a fun one. It's one that I've been thinking about for a really long time, and I'm very excited that now I'm finally filming it for you. This video was voted on by my patrons. I give them the option of either choosing a book I will read in my weekly vlog. This is Wanda, she says hello. Or in the event that I'm not able to vlog, then they get to choose what video I will post on that Monday. So happy Monday. Thank you patrons for choosing this video. It won at something like 42%, so it was kind of close. The other ones I will film and definitely get to. So this video is all about books that have reminded me why I love the romance genre as a whole. So just a little bit of an FYI, this is probably going to be books that are deeply personal for me. Obviously, these are books that made me love and appreciate the romance genre even more than I already did. I've been a lifelong romance reader. I picked up my first romance when I was 14, and it has been a constant throughout my life. Even as I have dabbled with other genres or spent a lot of time in other genres, I always come back to romance. I always love stories, and that's just I'm never going to stop loving it. So I have a pretty long history of it. So a few years ago, probably around 2022, the last half of 2022, maybe not even that long, maybe early 2023, I started becoming really disillusioned with some of what I saw trending and currently being published in romance books that didn't vibe with what I was looking for in romance, which is deeply romantic stories and strong character journeys and just overall this feeling of falling in love and something that is deeply romantic. Now obviously that's going to be subjective for what every person is looking for in romance, but I was feeling dissatisfied with what I was seeing in being published and what I saw being pushed and influenced on all the bookish socials. And so these are the books that throughout that whole time, and where I feel like I'm finally coming full circle and knee deep in romance once again. So these are the books that really stood out to me the most, that really reminded me why I love romance as a genre, and they all have something specific in them for why that is. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first book that I want to mention is probably the book that kind of really made me remember why I love romance, and it is The Right Move by Liz Tomforde. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It is one of the most beautiful romances that I feel like I have ever read. It is pretty long, and I feel like that is definitely adequate for the depth that the romance really gets in here and all of the small little scenes that we get to see moving this couple towards each other. So the basic premise of this is we have our hero who is an NBA All-Star, but he's sort of known for being cold and aloof, and so somebody higher up on the team is considering promoting him, but they're not quite sure if they want to because he is so cold and aloof. So he has this plan that if he has a fake girlfriend or a fake wife even, that will help him be more warm and they might consider him more. So Indy is our heroine, and she has just recently broken up with what she assumed to be the love of her life. She caught him cheating, literally caught him cheating, and she is sufficiently heartbroken and she feels very fragile. She's best friends with our hero Ryan's sister, and Ryan's sister Stevie says, hey, why don't you go stay with my brother since, you know, your douchebag boyfriend cheated on you and you don't have anywhere to go. So she ends up living with him, platonically of course, and they develop a relationship that takes the majority of this book that is such a beautiful transition of friends to lovers in the most emotional way that I think I have ever read. One of the main reasons I love this book so much is the attention to detail that Ryan pays in Indy's life, how he takes note of things that she likes and how he is always thinking of her, and how he's, through these small acts of service every day, he's showing her how much he loves her and how much she is always on his mind. And it is just a beautifully romantic book. I love it so much. This book was recommended to me by several friends, and they were like, this is you all over it. And they were right. I love this book. I love it so freaking much. Okay, now the next book that really made me remember why I love romance is Soft Flannel Hank. This is a very underrated, not very many people have read it. I think it only has like 400 ratings on Goodreads. Sort of light paranormal romance. This book had me so captivated, you guys. I absolutely loved everything about this book. So this book has our hero Hank, who is 45 years old. He's divorced. He's living in the Pacific Northwest. He's a little bit overweight, and he is just starting to dabble into therapy because he knows he can't fix himself and he needs help. And then we have Esther, our heroine, who is a witch, and she was working at this basically a bar for vampires, and she sees something that she shouldn't have seen, and so she is now on the run, which brings her to meet Hank. They sort of meet by chance. They have a one-night stand, but it feels like something that is so much more and so much deeper, and Hank and Esther sort of have this push and pull. Will you, won't you fall in love with me? Will, you know, can I keep you safe? Can I not? Type of relationship for the whole book. And it's just so beautiful. She is 35, so there's a little bit of an age gap here, but they're both so mature and both so, like, adult. This doesn't feel like your typical indie romance. It feels like a very mature romance, and I love that so much. I love Hank. I love how vulnerable he is. That's probably the thing that I love about this book the most, and what really captured my interest again in romance is watching him fall in love with her, watching him be very vulnerable with his emotions, watching him really be tender and tentative. And while he was very scared of, you know, falling in love again, he also wasn't at all gonna let that stop him when he tried to secure this woman as his. So I love this so much. Also, the one thing that I haven't mentioned is this is basically if Charlie in Twilight had his own romance. So it's very fun. I really, really love this. It's so romantic, and I can't stop talking about it. Okay, now the next book is a historical romance that had me by the throat from the moment I started this book. This is Forever Your Rogue by Erin Langston. This is an absolutely stunning romance. I love it so much. It is so sweet. It is so beautifully character-based, and I love the whole setup of this, where we have our heroine, who is a widow. She sort of gave up on the idea of marrying for love, and she is finding herself with these two children who she plays a very active role in their life. She's a very involved mother, but she finds herself through circumstances that some relatives have sort of brought into the case now that she's a widow. She's finding herself risking losing her children to them and not being able to raise them herself. And so the one thing that she needs in this time period is, of course, a husband. She needs a worthy man. And so she's trying real hard to figure out who could fill that role, and she meets Nate, who is a childhood friend. They always kind of had a little bit of sparks, but nothing serious ever happened. And he is a rogue. He is a rogue, he is rakish, he is not known for being like a huge stand-up guy, but he is available. And so they work out this deal that he's going to pretend to be her fiance to hopefully get her children back. And of course they fall in love. And the thing about this that I love so much is the very real transformative power of love at play in both of their lives, how they both are changed by the way that they love each other, how they have different ideas of what they want for themselves and for the future, and even the things that they hold value in changes because of the love they have for this person. I loved watching Nate fall in love with the heroine's children. I thought it was so freaking sweet. I love this book. It's one of my favorites of all time, and this one truly made me feel like not all was lost for me with romance books. I adored it. Now the next one is one that I have read this year, but it is a reread for me. So this is the third time I've reread this book, and it is Wicked and the Wallflower by Sarah MacLean. And let me just tell you, there are few things that get me as fired up and passionate about the romance genre as a whole than a Sarah MacLean book. I adore her books. I think she's fantastic. She is a beautiful writer. She has a true gift with words, but she also has such a very good understanding of characters. And I think one of the most important things is she has a very solid understanding. Wanda's in my lap trying to sniff these books, and I don't want them to get all wet. But she has a very real understanding of what romance readers want in a romance book, and she delivers on that for me so much. I love how every single book of hers that I read, the hero is completely out of his mind in love with the heroine. He loves and adores her. He wants her to be his. He will do anything for her, and I just never get tired of that, ever, 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 ever. And I also like how every time that she writes a hero, it's never a copy and paste. Like, her heroes are very diverse in how they act and how they respond and the fears they have, and, you know, I just love how she writes them, and the same goes for her heroines. So this book really deeply speaks to me and reminds me why I love romance, because it feels exactly like a love letter to romance readers. It is so fun watching this man, who is one of my favorite heroes ever, Devil, who is my favorite type of hero, an alpha mellow, watching him set this whole thing up where he sees Felicity, realizes she wants to marry the Duke, who he has a vendetta against, and he realizes he can use her to his advantage, and so he offers her a deal. I will get the Duke to fall in love with you if you know, help me with this plan. And she is not really excited about agreeing to that, even though she desperately needs the money for her family. because she's seen too many loveless, passionless marriages, and so she's not going to settle for anything less. And so she's like, okay, but you have to make him desire me and want me. So Devil thinks he is up to the task, and thus begins this game of them working together and Devil falling in love with her and trying to act like he's not. So it's so beautiful. There are so many lines in here that are so deeply romantic. I feel like I talk about this book all the time, and I'm never going to stop, because to me this is a very perfect romance novel. It delivers on everything that I specifically want, and now I need to remember that whenever I start feeling down or bad about romance books as a whole, this is the one that's going to get me out of it. So I love this book. I will recommend it until I can't recommend books anymore. So the next book that I want to recommend is actually a novella, and you do have to read the series before this book, so maybe I should also mention the series. The series is Daughter of Smoke and Bone, but I also feel like you could definitely pick this little novella up and just read it if you want to watch first love falling in love on page in action, because it is that perfectly, and there is nothing I like more in romances than watching the couple fall in love. That's what I'm here for. I want to see these two fall in love. I want to see every single moment where they are falling in love, and I feel like that was done so well here. You get both of their points of view. These are kids who are maybe like 17, 18 in their upper years in high school, starting college, and they are deeply in love with each other by the end of this book, but in the beginning, they just feel this sort of connection, this attraction, this feeling like that is someone special to me, and watching them kind of figure out how they might end up be together while they're still navigating those feelings of, but what if he doesn't like me? What if, you know, like, it's just so precious and so beautiful. And I have never, to this day, read an author who captures that feeling of young first love as perfectly as Laini Taylor. This book is just a bolt of sunshine, and it reinvigorates me to all of the beauty of romance books, even though it's technically a YA book. The beauty of love stories, falling in love, happily ever after. It's just so perfect in here. I love it so freaking much. So this one for sure. But honestly, I feel that way about everything Laini Taylor writes. All of her series, the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, the Strange the Dreamer series, they are so deeply romantic and so beautiful about watching these people fall in love. You have to read them. They're fantastic. Okay, now the next book is actually a newer release. This is a contemporary new adult romance, and I will say new adult is typically not my favorite genre. I kind of actually will avoid it just because I feel like it's not for me anymore. I really have a hard time vibing with characters who are super, super young in that sort of just beginning college stage, even though I did just mention a YA book. I feel like there's something about new adult that can really be hit or miss for me, that feels very immature, and that makes me just feel like this is just not for me. But I will say, I adored this book. This is one of my favorite romances I've read this year. This is a hockey romance with an ice skater heroine. It is so beautiful, and the author really takes her time building up their backstories and working through the trauma that they have and how they could actually end up together. It's perfection. It's beautiful. Our hero was involved in a hockey accident. He's a hockey star at this university, and now he has PTSD and some pretty severe panic attacks whenever he's on the ice. He's trying to overcome them. He goes out on the ice one day, and here comes our figure skater heroine, who also recognizes that he's having a panic attack because she's dealt with those before in her life. And she goes to him and she talks him through it, basically. Ma'am. And it's just so beautiful watching them connect and watching them fall in love. And this specifically spoke to me because of how ardently the hero was just out of his mind in love with her from almost the beginning, and how he took such crucial steps to be a part of her life and to meet her needs and to help her with everything that she was dealing with, because she's dealing with so much with basically raising her two younger brothers, and it's just beautiful. I love watching a couple really be there for each other through the thick and the thin times, and I feel like that's exactly what was happening here. I loved it so freaking much. Okay, the next book that I have is My Season of Scandal by Julianne Long. Truthfully, I could put any Julianne Long book in here that I have read, because last summer I devoured her Palace of Rogue series, everything that was out. So this is book 7 in the Palace of Rogue series, and I feel like Julianne Long needs a lot more hype. I think she is so amazing. I love all of her romances. She is the queen of swoon and banter and great setups and great side characters and great found family. She has it all in her romances. I love them so much, and this series is one of my all-time favorite historical romance series. And it's just fabulous. It's just so good and so fun. So I love everything about this, and the reason that I love Julianne Long so much is because she really captures that feeling of falling in love in such a beautiful way. It's so just charming and romantic, and I just love and adore it so much. So I love this book. I love this author. I could pick any of her books that I've read in the series for this, but this is the most recent one that I read. And it's basically about our heroine who is finally going to get a season. She is a little bit older for her coming out. Her dad is sort of on his deathbed. He knows he's not long for this world and he wants his daughter to be taken care of. So he spends some money, takes her to send her to London to have a season, gets her a chaperone, and he's sure that she's going to find a suitor and be married off and happy, and he can pass in peace and not worry about her. Now she ends up meeting a lord out there who sits on the House of Lords, I guess, and he is very heavily involved in the politics of the time, but he's also a very known scoundrel, and he is trouble, basically. But also, there's a possibility he may raise her currency in the social sphere just by her being connected to him. So they end up together, not like together, but they end up meeting, and they keep having these circle of meetings at these different balls at the Palace of Rogues, where he ends up because his house was basically torched by someone who is going against what he wanted to vote for in the politics. And they have this series of meetings that start out very, very mild, where it's just sort of the sense of intrigue of who is this person? What is happening here? What could happen here? And he is constantly feeling like maybe he shouldn't, because she is a little bit younger than him, and he sees that this is her chance to find a suitable man and marry and settle down, and he knows that he can't be that for her. But of course they end up falling in love. It's so beautiful. It's so romantic, and I just love and adore this book, and I love this author so much. Okay, another one that really reminded me of why I love romantic novels is Adjacent, but Only Just. So this is an author that I have really fallen in love with. I first read her last year at the end of the year. She writes some swoony and slow building romances that are just perfection. This is book 2 in a series, and we have our hero Malcolm, who is grieving the loss of his wife and trying to move on from that grief, and he's finding it very difficult. And then we have our heroine, who is a pretty well-known authoress, who ends up going to the town where Malcolm, our hero, lives to meet his brother, who is a famous poet, because everyone thinks that they're going to be a perfect match and they're going to marry and everything's going to be happy and it's going to be great, good times. So when they actually end up meeting out there, she ends up meeting Malcolm first, and she recognizes something about him that speaks to her soul, and he feels that spark as well. And he's very conflicted about that because he's still grieving the loss of his wife, and he doesn't really know how to handle this, and also knowing that she is meant for his brother. So there's a lot of forbidden elements here, but it's just so beautiful, you guys. Like, watching him really fold and fall in love with her, even though he was kind of hesitant to at first, it was just a thing of beauty, and I adored it. I love this book. I love this book so much, and it is so romantic. Perfect for if you want a really romantic read, I would recommend this one. Okay, so now the next one is King of Greed by Anna Huang. Anna Huang is one of my favorite authors. I love everything she writes. I think she has a gift for really getting me captivated and into a story pretty much right away. King of Greed has my favorite trope, which is second chance romance and marriage and trouble. So in this book we have our hero Dominic, who is now at the top of his game, a very successful businessman, very powerful, very wealthy, and he has finally made it to the top. But it is definitely jeopardizing basically all of his time. And his wife Alessandra is not really thrilled with that because she feels often pushed aside, an afterthought. She's not exactly happy with how he's been treating her and how he's been forgetting some key moments in their life. They met in college. She was there all the way, you know, helping him build his career and get through school. And now she's really, really feeling like he maybe has forgotten her and isn't prioritizing her. So things come to a head when it's an anniversary, and he has agreed to be there one night and he never shows up. So she ends up leaving that night and leaving him. And the rest of the book is him trying to make it up for her and trying to prove that he will be there for her. And it's the moment when he realizes what he lost with her that he didn't think he was going to lose. I think that really shook him and forces him to be the man that she knew that he was when they first met. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I love this romance. I love it so much. It's fantastic. Okay, and the last book that I want to talk about is A Not So Distant Love by Heidi Kimball. Heidi Kimball, again, is one of my favorite authors. She doesn't have a lot of books in her backlist, but everything I have read from her is so beautifully romantic, like achingly romantic. And she does such a good job of taking you on the character's journey, both the hero and the heroine. Oh, I love this book so much. So in this book, this is the sequel to Heart in the Highlands, which is one of my favorite books too. So this is the daughter of that couple, and she will inherit the dukedom of her father. it's kind of weird circumstances that allow her to inherit that. So before she does that, she wants to try and travel and live on her own and experience some things, and so she has an opportunity to go to America with her cousin, and she jumps on it. So she goes to travel over there, and as she's learning, you know, things about America and meeting people, and she's doing some acts of service, so it's really just a fun, unique look at a historical romance, even though I did miss the Highland setting just a little bit, but it makes up for it with the romance. So while she's over there, she ends up meeting the doctor in the town, who is also a widower, and he is a very grumpy, broody hero who has a lot of damage and is not looking for anybody romantically, friendship. He is basically just kind of rude to everybody, you know? And she sees that not necessarily as a challenge, but she wants to know why he's hurting so bad, and to see if she can help, because that's who she is. She's the type of woman that wants to ease everybody's pain, and I think that a lot of women can probably relate to that. So it was really and truly beautiful and so soft and just so lovely watching her try to get him to open up through friendship. This is really like a true friends to lovers. It's so stunningly beautiful, and especially watching the hero's journey as he has a lot of healing to do, and while he still continues to battle with these themes of grief and guilt of losing his wife, and maybe the hope of a future that could be something different, that could be what he was hoping that his original future was going to be. It's just so lovely, and I felt like the romance in here was very believable. It felt very realistic, and it was still like knee-weakeningly romantic. I just adored it so freaking much. So there you have it, my friends. Those are the 10 books that I have read in the last year and a half that have really reignited my love for the romance genre and have made me believe that romance novels are believe again that romance novels are important, they are powerful, they are beautiful, and they are so swoony. So if you're looking for a romantic read, I highly recommend any of these books. Please let me know what book you feel like really made you love the romance genre. I would love to know. And if you've made it this far, please feel free to leave me a yellow heart, and I'll see y'all in my next video.